Nine Lives by Robert Brancatelli. Nine Lives is copyright 2016 by Robert Brancatelli and published by Blumen Publishing of New York. No part of this recording may be used or reproduced in any manner without written permission from Blumen Publishing. Although based in reality, this is a work of fiction. Therefore, the events, people, and institutions portrayed here are imaginary. Such portrayals and accompanying commentary are not meant to malign, defame, or injure any person or reputation. Both the author and publisher regret any unintentional harm that may result from the recording and distribution of Nine Lives. This is for Edgar, Arthur, and Ryder. But can you type? I have to confess that one of my biggest mistakes was being a liberal arts major in college. It doesn't prepare you for anything, no matter what they tell you about the need for critical thinking, breadth of knowledge, and education versus job training. They're all lies. Sure, it's great to wax eloquent about the Aeneid, dialectical materialism, or Derrida's deconstruction of construction, but nobody's going to pay you for it. It makes for charming banter at cocktail parties and soirees. You might even get lucky with a starry-eyed film student. But after a while, correcting somebody else's grammar, even if only in your head, gets old if not downright offensive. See, it's icing on the cake, but not the actual cake. All it does is leave the poor student with two options: unrelated, less than meaningful jobs in Twinkie or gorilla suits, or graduate school. And since most people don't want to go to college to do things like repossess cars, although my roommate Mike enjoyed it because he was high most of the time, a liberal arts degree dooms people to years of slavery in the academic salt mines. Professors love it because they create mini-me's who worship them and even dress like them, which I've witnessed personally and found more than a little disturbing, although that was in a religious studies department that boasted a Jewish Wiccan professor by the name of Opal Klein. How many stars were on that? How many points were on that star? We were all very enlightened then. There'll be a ton of backlash about this, mainly in department meetings from people who drink out of NPR coffee mugs. But I have a duty to stand up for students, just as I did for my oppressed co-workers in Monterey. Of course, it didn't work then and probably won't work now, but I can't keep towing the party line, comrades. Besides, living in your parents' basement at 45 isn't very attractive. The bohemian life ends at least 10 years earlier. I don't think anybody in La Boheme, or its modern equivalent, Rent, was over 30 except the landlord. The irony here is that I did not follow my own advice. Go to law school before you set out to be a writer. That way you'll have something to fall back on, my parents counseled. All right, I said, lying. Play the game, get tenure, and then you can write as much fiction as you want and still have a secured position, a colleague advised. I will, I said, lying. I remember a question a woman in a temp agency asked me on that fateful day in August with the cubic zirconium after I had finished my bologna sandwich and crawled back out into the 200-degree heat of Fifth Avenue. Even patience and fortitude, the library lions, looked spent. I've reviewed your application and need to ask you some questions, the woman said, looking at me through her black-framed rhinestone glasses with a mixture of pity and contempt. The corners of her mouth were upturned slightly in a twist. I wasn't sure if it was a twist of irony or lemon from the iced tea she was drinking, but she definitely wasn't what you would call warm, in spite of the temperature. Thank God the office was air-conditioned. Behind her sat a dirty plastic pot on a file cabinet with ivy spilling out, nearly touching the floor. It looked like it needed water. A lot of water. So you have a bachelor's degree from Ursinus College? Yes. In English? Yes. and a minor in philosophy and religion. That's right. She paused, and I offered, I wrote a paper on Morphean semantics. It was in advanced grammar class. I don't know why, but somehow in my arrogance I had managed to convince myself that this was significant. It sounded desperate. She looked up with more pity than contempt, then back down at my paperwork. And I see from your application that you've worked at a children's amusement park where, apart from your regular responsibilities running the rides, you spoke French to the tourists from Quebec. A summer camp for blind adults where you played darts with the campers and took them boating and hiking in a swamp. A golf course where you washed the balls dredged up from the pond by scuba divers. And selling ice cream from a truck, although that was only for, 2 weeks. I got stung, I said. Stung? By a swamp fly as I leaned out the window to give a kid a creamsicle. I got a huge lump on my forehead. It was near that same swamp in South Jersey where the summer camp was. Staring. My mother made me quit the job. And now you want to be a writer. It sounded absurd when she said it, and I remembered the time not much earlier when I sat in the Navy recruiter's office with my father. To make his point, the recruiter had taken out a huge manual with an anchor on the cover, slammed it down on the metal desk, and declared, "We need people to write these, you know." "Do you have any skills?" the woman asked. "Skills? You know, can you do anything?" "Well, yes." I cleared my throat and ran through the inventory on my fingers. It wasn't as bad as I thought. I took metal shop in high school. Go on. And print and wood and auto shop too. Oh, and photography. Well, that's impressive, she said, somewhat relieved. So can you do any of those things now? Now? I don't mean right now, but have you kept up those skills so that we can tell a prospective employer? Suddenly I felt flushed. I thought of the wooden duck ornament with the twisted, misshapen head, the uneven tin ashtray, and the disassembled carburetor that I couldn't for the life of me put back together. Pieces of it were in a shoebox on a shelf in the garage. The Christmas napkins were nice, though. They had a little red Santa head in one corner and green holly in the other. Lame, but nice. Not really. And at Ursinus? I studied English literature and classical languages. Back to staring. They don't teach skills in college, I added as an afterthought. I wasn't trying to be a wise ass. It just came out that way. No, I suppose they don't, she said, sitting back in her chair. Then she formed a bridge with her fingertips and kept tapping them together, studying me. I don't know how long this lasted, but it was long enough to make me squirm, which was probably the point. Tell me, can you type? She asked at last. My immediate reaction was to say, type what? But I didn't. I looked past her to the ivy reaching down the file cabinet. I didn't want the interview to end, but it was obvious that it was over. I didn't have anything to offer that anybody wanted. To this day, I still wonder whether my life would be different had I answered yes. But I didn't. I told her the truth. I comfort myself with the thought that eventually my impersonation of somebody who knew what he was doing would have been found out, maybe in dramatic fashion. I picture some employer calling all upset about the kid they sent over who doesn't know his ass from his elbow, and what kind of temp agency are you running over there anyway? And he would have been right. I didn't know how to do anything. not even type, which was ridiculous considering all the typing we had to do in our senior seminars. But I was a pecker, not a typer. I still am. So what would have been different exactly? I don't know. But if I had had a practical skill, cabinetry, stained glass, copy machine repair, topiary design, I would have been able to pay the phone and electric bills on time, and maybe afford a vacation to Mazatlan, where you can dive off the cliffs into an azure sea, which would have been something to write about. Hemingway went there to fish. I could have done that and then gone off to Spain to fight in a war. But then I also might have pushed my daughters into the liberal arts, the grass always being greener. Who knows, they could be starving artists in a drafty garret right now, instead of well-paid professionals in California. I guess they'll just have to live with that shame and read the Aeneid in a good translation. I'll be there to help them. I hope you enjoyed this reading. Please go to those links for more. Thanks very much.